So you may be wondering why in this thumbnail I have the Foundation Trilogy and The Empire Strikes Back out. First of all, this is a terrible pun, because that is what the name of the second book is. Foundation and Empire. But there is more than just a joke about it, actually. So with Foundation, I kind of talked about how there were a few elements that seemed very similar to Star Wars. The entire planet that's a giant city of Trantor reminds me a lot of Coruscant, and it's interesting that one of the planets is known as Corellia, and they have Corellian ships. Not the local cruisers, I mean the big ones, you know? So the main comparisons I make between the two is that both are a lot deeper than the original. So Foundation, for the most part, and sorry, I gotta say this pun at least once, set the foundation for, well, what the Foundation even is. What a Harry Seldon crisis is, how in the world these crises have been dealt with in the past, and the idea that Harry, after all these years, has kind of become a bit of a god, as he was able to predict the future to a very startling degree. And after each major event, he would show up as a hologram to say, all right, you did it, you're on track. But you have to keep vigilant, otherwise the Foundation will be wiped out. Like I said, that's Foundation, and very similar to The Empire Strikes Back. It builds upon what was done in the first one, and makes it even better, while also being a lot darker than the original. And I think that's something that both fans of Empire Strikes Back, and perhaps fans of Foundation and Empire, really like about it. So, what is the story? At this point, it's been about 500 years since the Foundation was established on a remote planet of Terminus. When it was originally set up, it was under the protection of the Galactic Empire. However, even in the first book, it's noted that the Empire was slowly losing its control over planets on the outside. So it got to a point where the Empire doesn't even know what the Foundation is anymore. Nobody is left alive that knows what it is, and all the paper trails that would lead to it are very scarce, and very few people want to go looking for it. However, there was this one plucky general known as Bel Royce who wanted to make a name for himself, and when he was hearing all these rumors about a strange planet with what's known as magicians, because at this point the Foundation's technology has outdone the Galactic Empire's output for technology, and thus there is kind of a magical quality, much like how in the first book there was a bit of a mystical religious quality, and that's how they were able to quell some of the Outer Rim territories. But Bel Royce saw this as a threat to the Empire, and went investigating where the Foundation could be found, if it even exists in the first place. Now what's rather fascinating is there's a bit of a callback to the first book. So, as Herbert Marlowe, the master trader, was going to this one planet trying to figure out how advanced they were in the field of atomics, he talked to this mysterious old man who was able to give him all the information he needed on this mysterious planet. And as a reward, Marlowe gave him a personal shield generator for protection. However, it only really lasted about 2 years after he left. However, after that day, he was very curious to know where this guy came from. Now, at this epoch, it's the son that's continuing the father's research, and he's about as old as the father was when Herbert Marlowe found him. Bel Royce basically takes the son as a hostage, as a way to try to pick up where the trail went cold. Both of them are successful in finding the Foundation, and there Bel Royce is just shocked at the technological advances that the Foundation has, and thus starts an all-out war with them. His base is on a remote asteroid, and he seems to be doing pretty well taking care of all the outer planets that would be quite strategically advantageous for the Foundation. However, while on this asteroid, which I'm starting to think might be referenced in Polis Mesa in Star Wars as well, there is a master trader that is caught just traveling a little too close to the asteroid for the general's comfort. And so he is taken captured and his goods are seized. Or at least they try to, until one of them goes off killing a few of the soldiers. As he's a prisoner, he's being held with the son that was mentioned earlier. And it's very interesting to see this reunion, as it's noted that this master trader has some relation to Malo, actually. So they get to talking, and the son brings up the personal shield. And he recognizes it right away as a tool of the Foundation, and says, yeah, it's kind of older, probably around the time Malo was around, but yep, that's definitely the Foundation's. And so, despite their facade, both of them are very interested in making sure that the Foundation survives, as both of them are very hard believers in Harry Seldon's goal of trying to stop the barbarianism, but also in the idea that the Foundation will always win. But it seems like they need a little help this time. So with the help of some of the gadgets that were not confiscated from the Master Trader, they are able to break out, subdue Belroyce, and then try their best to plead their case to the Emperor of the Galaxy. However, this is a lot easier said than done, as none of them have a paper trail, so they have to establish an identity, they have to get jobs, they have to be able to work up the social ladder in order to be deemed worthy of an audience. And even then, by the time they get there, they're charged with treason. They try their best to break in, but that doesn't work. They are then detained for several months. However, it works out in the end anyway, as the Emperor sees the Foundation as just a waste of time and resources. And so the general is forced to resign, all the troops return back to the Empire, and the Foundation is restored. By the time the son and the Master Trader come back, they're hailed as heroes. However, both of them are like, we did nothing. We were just there at the right place at the right time. However, after enough of it, they're just kind of like, yeah, you know, let's party it up. We'll go from there. Now, with the first Foundation, there was 4 stories that were split up multiple years apart. And the biggest problem I had with these stories is I feel like we didn't really get the dive into the characters, be able to see these mystical places that existed. And all in all, it just felt like the stories were just lacking that extra little bit to help. Well, I could say without any doubt, this second story is the best one that I have read thus far in this anthology. About 50 years since the events of the first story. At this time, the Foundation has grown stagnant, fat, lazy, and stupid. They haven't really had any major conflicts that have forced them to change, or to be able to evolve in any sort of way. However, the people don't really care, as this is an era of prosperity for all that are under the Foundation's control. At this point, there is an offshoot of the Foundation on a planet known as Haven. It was established by all the Master Traders that wanted to have their own headquarters somewhere else. And also, this is kind of where there's a bit more progression. They're the ones that have their own armada. They have good ships, they have good weapons, so in the case there was an outside attack on the Foundation, they'd be able to at least put up a fight, while the Foundation would be kind of like, you know, it's fine, Harry will protect us. On this other planet, we focus on a newly married couple, Torin and Beta, who had been invited there by Torin's uncle. There they meet up, talk about recent married life, as well as current events. Now, Beta is actually born on the Foundation itself, and thus has a direct line to the Foundation's teachings, unlike Torin, who is kind of getting it secondhand from the other Master Traders. Beta theorizes that there has to be another cataclysmic conflict, as the Foundation just has done nothing since the Belroyce incident, and that's the only way that the Foundation is able to better itself and strengthen itself. However, there is rumblings off in the distance where a very mysterious character known as the Mule is starting to take over several planets without firing a single shot. This is obviously something that upsets everybody in the family, and thus Torin and Beta go to investigate the last planet that the Mule conquered, known as Caligan. Now, the interesting thing about this planet is even though it's gone through several years of turmoil from different warlords taking over, the Empire falling, and all that other stuff, the people of it never really noticed a change because it's always been very prosperous, it's been very rich, and a lot of people go there from all over the galaxy to vacation. And maybe it's just me, but I feel like this is kind of similar to the casino planet in The Last Jedi. So they go to the planet under the cover of a newlywed couple enjoying their honeymoon. There is very little that is being turned up about the Mule, his origins, as well as potential weaknesses. They decide to go to the beach, where they find a street performer is putting on a show for some of the other people. Beta's heart immediately goes out to him, as he is horribly disfigured and gaunt, and he's just trying his best to earn his pay. And so, she wants to be entertained by him. However, this doesn't fly, as the local enforcers see him as kind of disturbing the peace, and on top of that, he is the court jester of the Mule, and the Mule wants it back. At this point is when Torin steps in. He tells them that they are from the Foundation, and the interesting thing is, because of their reputation of being able to take over worlds without firing a single shot like the Mule, there is a lot of respect that goes there. So the crowd that is formed to see this conflict is quickly disbanded, except for the law enforcement officers, who are still saying, okay, well, you may be from the Foundation, but you know, the Mule wants his court jester back, and we're going to take him back one way or another. So Torin takes a swing at the enforcer, and before more troops arrive, they go back to their ship, which is in this massive parking garage, all with this street performer in tow, who we later find out his name is Magnifico, which I'm pretty sure is Spanish for magnificent. They try to extract whatever information they can out of him, when all of a sudden there is a knock at the door. Everybody's a little apprehensive, thinking that it might be the enforcers coming to take Magnifico away back to the Mule. But instead, someone in the Secret Service of the Foundation, known as Han Pritchard. And yeah, Han, H-A-N. How could you not think of Star Wars? He has also been trying to get information on the Mule, and he figures instead of working against each other, they can work together to try to figure out what information they piece together. Without Magnifico, Pritchard was able to find out that there is very little to go on for the Mule. His early life is practically non-existent, but the main thing that is known for sure is that he has mutant powers, which is then confirmed by Magnifico as well. However, what the mutation is very unclear. The only things Magnifico is able to say is that he is very strong and that looking into his eyes bring death. And please tell me I'm not the only one that immediately thought of Cyclops when I heard this definition. I don't know, I just kind of figured he had like laser eyes, so when you look into his eyes you like burn or something. Because it is also mentioned that he wears these very strange glasses as well to try to shield his eyes. And I figured maybe it was something like that. Or maybe he had like Medusa powers where if you look into his eyes you get turned to stone, something like that. While they're getting all this information together, we jump back to the Foundation, where we see that the art of psychology is starting to come back a little bit, in the form of who's essentially a really big jerk known as Ebling Miss. He knows he has power that everybody has to listen to, and he takes full advantage of it. So for example, he goes into the mayor's office to tell him particular news. For this mayor, there's a lot of protocol. You gotta be able to sign up, wait a week in advance. There's only one chair for the mayor, but he finds a seat anyway. And on top of that, he just bursts right in through the door, and the guards don't even try to stop him because they know of his power. The news he has is that from his very rudimentary studies of psychohistory, is that the Foundation is going to experience another Selden crisis in another 6 months, which seems a bit coincidental, as this is another time that the Time Vault is opening up for Harry Selden to be able to give another speech. The mayor is very disgusted because his protocol has just been completely broken, and there's allegations of him being like a really weak mayor, and this just seems like an insult to his character. However, he does keep that advice in the back of his head. So at this point, Pritchard, Beta, Magnifico, and Torin all head back to the Foundation, as even the Mule is a little afraid of the Foundation, and it seems like that is probably one of the best areas of protection. While there, Eblingmas tries his best to use his skill of psychology in order to get more information out of Magnifico, who after being exposed to the Mule for so long is just very shaken up. However, since Beta was nice to him, Magnifico has kind of become this personal bodyguard to her. Eblingmas's first thing is to give him this odd little device. It's said to produce music, but what's very interesting about it is it's an experience of all the senses. Not only is it sound, but it's sight, and there's even feelings involved with it as well. And it turns out Magnifico is actually very good at using this, and gave quite a few concerts until we get to that 6-month point. Now this news also spread to the offshoot of Haven as well, and even they want to know what is going on in this time vault, and maybe prepare for another war. So everybody is sitting there, and as usual, Harry is there in his wheelchair with his big book, and he gives his news. But for the first time in Foundation history, he is completely wrong. According to him, the Foundation has just got done with the Civil War, and now the pieces are all coming back together again. Before Harry is able to finish his message, all of a sudden, the whole room goes black, and there is an invasion force of the Mule. It's at this point, some of Torin's relatives, Magnifico, and Beta are all able to escape before the Foundation falls. It's been a few years, and Haven is trying its hardest to be able to fight against the Mule. However, once the Mule took over the Foundation, as well as Callaghan, he has an invincible fleet of just nearly unlimited numbers, as well as very advanced technology, and the people are starting to lose hope. It's then that another little family meeting is called, and there we get another big bomb of information. From research, it turns out there was a second Foundation, and thus Tori, Beta, Eblingmas, and Magnifico all go on to the search of the second Foundation. Shortly after they leave, Haven falls as well. Now with Eblingmas in charge, it seems like the best place to try to figure out anything about the Second Foundation is to be able to go back to the original university that Harry Selden left from back when Trantor was prospering. However, with the Mule in charge, he was actually able to dethrone the Emperor, and thus, instead of being a bustling metropolis, has become an agrarian culture. All the cities are being ripped up in order to be able to produce more farmland, and the metal is used for protection. They sell it to armies, and in turn, they don't attack what's left of the place. However, before they can get there, there is one last holdout known as Neo-Trantor, which has this bumbling old man that claims to be what's left of the Emperor of the Universe. The group try to seek an audience with him. However, they realize that it's just not going anywhere, as oftentimes he kind of keeps going, "Who are you? Oh, you're going to Trantor. Well, you need my permission to do that." "Wait, what is your mission again?" "Oh, and what's your name?" It's just not going anywhere when they decide to leave. However, that is when the Emperor's son takes them all captive and tries to figure out what their real mission is about. The sun gets quite snippy with Beta, and Magnifico does not forget that. The sun releases Magnifico for their own entertainment because he's silly looking, and allegedly he's able to play this mysterious instrument that I mentioned earlier. And so, he plays his song, but it's a lot different this time, as the emotions felt by it are very different. And at the end of it, the prince, as well as the guard that was listening to it, dropped dead. This is able to give them a chance to escape to Trantor, where they try their best to see what's left of the old university. Now at this point on the Foundation, Han Pritchard is still keeping up his ever-vigilant mission to be able to dethrone the Mule and get the Foundation back. He finds himself part of an underground organization that is dedicated to the same thing. He doesn't try to shake up anything, so he just kind of goes to work at the factory, and then he meets up with these conspirators once a month to try to throw off the trail. It's then that he has a very daring plan. So he has this atomic capsule that he keeps under his tongue, and it's set to go off in like 10 hours, and it has the explosive yield of an atomic bomb. Han is a little disappointed that he has to kill himself for it, but he figures it's a worthy cause to be able to save the Foundation. He's able to sneak into the palace, but unfortunately, the Mule is not there, but rather his viceroy. And on top of that, the explosion is rendered useless. The capsule is thrown to the side, and not even so much as a comes from it. It turns out that the Mule had been smart to his plan for a while, and even had a few agents in the underground to see what would happen. It's realized that this viceroy actually used to be Pritchard's commanding officer. It turns out that the Mule has this power to be able to convince anybody to be able to fight on his side. And Pritchard is taken in to be conditioned. The chief there is very nice, since they don't usually get visitors. He shows them where the university is, which, not really being seen as a place of high value, has been left perfectly preserved even before the sacking, as it was called. That is where the search continues. While the chief is able to supply food, Torn and Beta are able to take care of the domestic things such as sleep, food, as well as trying to keep up morale a little bit. While Ebling Miss and Magnifico go off on their own, just delving into every single article that they can find. They're probably there for about a week, and you really start to see it take a toll on Ebling Miss. He's all of a sudden losing his hair. He's getting much older, and it just seems like he doesn't really have a whole lot of time left. The group has been going over everything they can find for the past 2 weeks in what's left of the university library. And all of a sudden, there is a knock at the door, and it is Han Pritchard, the great champion that wants to keep the Foundation going. However, he looks a little different now. He is a colonel, and is now under the service of the Mule. There, he is able to give them a bit of a warning as to what they are up against. Han finally knows what the mutation is. He is able to change the emotions of a person, as well as a little bit of telepathy that he can also read some thoughts, but it's not necessarily clear. And this is really interesting because usually when you hear about brainwashing, people don't usually remember the life they had of when they were on the opposition, the feelings they had while they were being brainwashed, as well as the feelings that they have now. But Pritchard knows all and tells all. It's just so interesting because he has his same convictions that he did before, but because now the hate he had for the Mule has been turned to love and camaraderie, that conviction has nothing to stand on. And I went into a bit of a philosophical episode when I first read this, because I'm just kind of like, is it possible to have a strong conviction but then not any emotion towards it? Is it possible to kill a person that you only have feelings of love for? And part of me is just kind of like, no, you were one of the great generals of the Foundation. You knew the Mule was a problem. You went after him, and now you are working for him. I took it about as personally as Beta when she first heard the news. So Han basically leaves them with a bit of a warning, saying that this is his power. To which Beta and Torin basically say, you fought to the last moment to try to save everything you had in your mind, right? To which Pritchard said, yes, I fought to the last. To which both of them say, give us that same dignity as well. And then he leaves without another word. It's about 3 days later, and at this point, Ebling Miss is basically just a walking corpse. And he doesn't even walk anymore. He is lying down, and under his dying breath, he is able to reveal his research. He tells them that there is indeed another foundation. And in order to make sure that this information stayed safe, he destroyed any evidence that he could find along the way. And just as he is about to say where the second foundation is, he dies. Thus, it still remains a mystery. This is the other reason I bring up The Empire Strikes Back. Much like the ending of Foundation and Empire, there is this really big twist that I feel like nobody ever saw coming except for the creators of each. And this is also kind of a major spoiler point, so if you want to read the book for yourself and see what the major twist is, I will end the review here. And I'll basically say that Foundation and Empire, this is probably the best of the trilogy that I've read so far. And if you're a big fan of dark stories that lead into a pretty epic finale, then you will find that Foundation and Empire gets you just what you need. And the thing I love is because there's only 2 stories, you really get to understand these characters. In the first anthology, by the time you are able to attach yourself to a character, it's already jumped ahead several years, and we're already focusing on another character. Here, you really get to understand everything and everywhere that's going on. And I feel like, while the planets are not as vast as they were in the first Foundation, they are very well described here in Foundation and Empire, although there obviously is less of them. So for those of you that don't want the spoiler, join me next time for the epic conclusion. And for those that do, here we go. A few days before Ebling Miss's death, Beta is able to sneak a blaster, to which Torin is just instantly confused as to what she wants it for. And she gets a little snippy every time he asks. Basically, she says she just wants it for protection. So then we jump back to when Ebling Miss is on his deathbed and is about to say the location of the Second Empire. It was Beta that drew out her blaster and killed him before he is able to reveal the location of the Second Empire, and thus that information dies with him. They both reflect on this a little bit, to which Torin is just like, but why did you do that? We finally found our goal, and now you completely destroyed it? How are we going to warn the Second Foundation about this now? To which Beta says, if that information was revealed, it would have also been revealed to the Mule as well. And for me, I just kind of thought this was her way of saying, when they get captured, if Han Pritchard was able to find them, then obviously the Mule knows where they are. Then he would be able to exude his emotional influence over them, and thus they wouldn't want to keep a secret from a dear friend of theirs, now would they? But Beta really starts to reflect and even tells Torin about this. It seems a little bit coincidental that catastrophe seems to follow them everywhere, and they're just barely able to escape every time. The day the Foundation fell, they just barely left before the Mule took over. Haven fell, they were able to leave before they took over. And there's just been a lot of other things going on where all of a sudden they seem untouchable. Then the other big thing is, Magnifico is such a scared and gentle soul. Sure, he was trying to protect Beta from the prince, but the idea that such a frail being was strong enough to be able to kill, that was a bit of a red flag for Beta. And thus, Beta says that Magnifico is also the Mule. To which Torn is just like, are you out of your mind? What have you been reading here while we've been here? To which then Magnifico goes around to them and says, I've heard everything you just said, and you are correct. I am the Mule. I had a perfect plan, but now a fatal flaw has emerged itself. And then he starts to go in a little bit about his childhood. Since nobody liked him due to his deformities, he wanted a way to be able to get revenge on humanity. It wasn't until about his mid-20s that he really started to discover he had this power to be able to not only read emotions, but to be able to manipulate them. At first, he kind of figured it was something everybody else would be able to do. But then he realizes that it's not. And then he starts to realize that this is a way he can create friends, comrades, to be able to even get revenge against all the people that have wronged him all those years. But what he did not count on was Beta actually liking him. This was the first time anybody had ever shown him compassion that was not emotionally conditioned. And because of that, he respected her mind and did not manipulate her in any way. And on top of that, she was able to keep her emotions together very well to be able to keep hidden that Beta had the intent of killing Eblingness because she knew that the Mule was right there. Now here's a rather interesting thing. I'll read this out loud from the novel. All of a sudden, Beta starts going into the idea of saying, you didn't just blunder, you lost this entire war. You will be the first and probably the last of your kind to be able to take over the Foundation. You will never be able to leave behind a massive dynasty. To which he said, you know what, I did have a few little theories about that, actually. I sense your revulsion, but that's silly. If things were otherwise, I could make you happy very easily. It would be an artificial ecstasy, but there would be no difference between it and the genuine emotion. But things are not otherwise. I call myself the Mule, but not because of my strength, obviously. He left them, never looking back. As a way to kind of say that his friendship with Beta was not artificial, and thus spares their life as well as their minds from the emotional conditioning. Now, you can feel free to leave it up to your interpretation, but when I first read that, I thought the Mule was saying that he was sterile, because a mule is a mixture between a horse and a donkey, and it is unable to reproduce by itself. And I figure that's why he's saying he can never create a mighty dynasty. However, he could easily just emotionally manipulate somebody and have them be the next in line for the throne. However, this could mean perhaps he is a mutt. He is a combination of two great households and two great bloods. And so it's very hard to see which side of that family would be able to take over the throne from there. Or if you want, you can kind of go for the more raunchy interpretation if you want. But I'm just going to end it at that. I'll leave you to speculate. So yes, Foundation and Empire. This was fantastic. I really enjoyed reading it. And it leaves just enough of a cliffhanger to wonder who's going to be the ones to be able to get to the second Foundation first. The Mule, or what's left of the Foundation. And then from there it decides the fate of the entire known universe. I hope you will join me for that exciting conclusion in Second Foundation. Until next time, keep having fun.